So we are looking at week 14, Kit K theme C, the suffix ing, and this was a good week for me because I had an easier time putting this together, which I'm hoping is because I'm getting better at this. But I just felt like I was seeing some of the systems that we've been practicing for all the rest of the weeks. So, the big ideas of this theme are the suffix ing is extremely useful for establishing several basic patterns of spelling. And I think that I'm just going to pause for a second and say that one of the frameworks in our real spelling work is the idea that we use interesting sets of letters, or we use these ideas to establish, not principles, but to establish a working thing that we can carry on. ing is only one vowel suffix. Our goal in this is not to become experts at ing, but to begin looking at vowel suffixes. We'll come back to others, but we're not going to study every vowel suffix in these themes. So the idea being that we're using ing to teach the larger concept that what vowel suffixes do when they're fixed to words. Okay, so first of all, ing is extremely useful because it's very, very common. It's not like the ed suffix that shifts in pronunciation too much, so I think this is a really good one to start with. It is a vowel suffix and serves as a pattern for all other vowel suffixes. It's a letter string that establishes early in the learning that spelling is more interested in letter strings than in isolated letters, and that comes out in the pronunciation of ing. It's only two phonemes when you say it. It can be written as a single integrated movement pattern, so it also serves as a model for handwriting. This theme is a little bit repetitive to the one we did with ly and ful, but that's a good thing. The theme teaches that ing is one of the most common English suffixes, that it should be written as a single continuous movement pattern, that as a vowel suffix, it can have an effect on the last letter of the word to which it is suffixed. Before starting the theme, some of the things that we have to make sure we establish with kids, we did in the last theme, but you may have some individuals or small groups that still need to understand that we're interested in strings and groups of letters rather than individual letters. Make sure we know the names. Identify they work in predictable groups, and there's not a gazillion of them, it's a predictable amount, that they don't go anywhere willy-nilly. The other thing that you might want to review quickly with your kids, or at least keep your eye out for those that aren't yet making the connection, is the vowels themselves, A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, as well as the relationship between the I and the Y. I'm happy that we've done all the groundwork we've done to get to this point, because I feel like we can jump right in. Okay. Melvin starts with one way to introduce this theme, might be, we've been working with the suffixes ly and ful. We have used them to build words. Today we're going to get to know the suffix ing. This is an interesting suffix because it can make things happen to the last letter of the word you are fixing it to. One of the things that he promotes in this theme that I think is fantastic is excitement. He builds this idea that, is it a vowel suffix? Yes, because something exciting is going to happen, versus these other suffixes that you just put them on, nothing really happens. And I think for kids that'll be exciting. They'll immediately be on the lookout for the vowels because something happens. So he introduces this sort of as a way to begin working with the suffix is, of course, to first be writing it as a string. This is not ing, it's ing. And we need to start fixing that in our mind, and we can do it through motor, so writing it out or using the keyboard. Then he moves to building some basic words and practicing, and I've listed the steps here, but practicing adding ing to the base word, spelling it out, doing all the oral work of the word sum. The basic words are the words that you first select, shouldn't have any forced changes, because that way you can just still practice with the word sums and make sure that kids are saying ing. So this is in the theme, and I didn't print it out, but it would be easy to put it on the server as well. Then he moves into more complex work with ing. First, comparing it with the other two suffixes that we've already studied. Suffixing a word that ends with E. When we add ly or ful, things don't often happen, or maybe never, I'm just going to say happen to the end of a word. But with ing, something happens to words that end in E. That's the very first ing principle we're kind of working with. Ing is a vowel suffix. Suffixes that begin with vowels are all called vowel suffixes, so that's another thing. We may have already talked about that a little bit, but just reinforcing that. Vowel suffixes are interesting because they can make things happen to the last letter of the word you're fixing them to, and suffixes that begin with consonants don't make things happen. So making that distinction, we could even on our base suffix prefix chart, have vowel suffixes be a different color. I think that would be interesting, or highlighted or something. They're kind of the ones to watch out for, but the ones that are very exciting. The last letter principle, the only letter that might be affected by adding a suffix is the last letter of the word before it. I think this was really interesting because when I first read it, I didn't really get the principle, but I've seen this before with kids writing it, and that's that willy-nilly idea. So, all right, I know I take off the E, but I'm just going to add another letter too. So I think this was interesting here, and a good thing to sort of maybe write up as a, I know he has laws and principles, but that the last letter might be effective, but only that last letter. It won't be the letters preceding that will be affected of the word before it by adding the suffix. We do a doubling, but it doesn't actually take a word out. Yeah. So the next set of practice, and this is very confusing, this is what happens when you make a chart on your couch, is that we begin using some words in our investigation that will force a change. And Melvin, this is sort of the way he said to go about it. First you say the base word, save, point to a student and ask them to add the suffix, then say the whole word, saving, write out the word sum but don't finish it. So S-A-V-E plus I-N-G, and then model out loud the whole word sum part. But when you say check the joins, force yourself to ask this question. Does the suffix begin with a vowel letter? Simple question to begin embedding and always be looking for when we attach joins or when we're checking the joins. So S-A-V-E plus I-N-G is rewritten as check the joins. Does the suffix begin with a vowel letter? My first thought, oh, it does. And then I get to say, woohoo, because we've established that this idea that vowel suffixes are so exciting because something happens. So then we come back and say, well, when you add a vowel suffix to a word that ends in a single silent E, we replace the E with the vowel suffix. Then you can change the word sum, cross out the E, and read the sum as you have it. S-A-V-E plus I-N-G is rewritten as, check the joins, S-A-V, no E, I-N-G. Lots of work here to practice. And I think we need to, the reason why I wrote this out so succinctly, in steps like this, is we really want to get the process down, but of course we're going to make mistakes and everything else, but yeah. And I even forgot to put in check the joins and had to go back. So lots of work here. This is just one list, but I could see some, spending lots of time on words and having kids find other words and practice word songs. The next step with ING is to investigate some words that force the letter before it to double. This is written up for teachers. This isn't necessarily how I do it with kids. I sort of did the opposite. There's a couple of things you could do. You could start with a word and wonder what else might happen to the last letter of a word when you're adding ING. Do they always just drop off, or does something else happen to it? And using some examples to hypothesize what you think is happening and why, or you could directly tell them the pattern. And the pattern is the last letter before the suffix a consonant? Is there only one vowel letter immediately before that? If so, you double the final consonant. So working through the examples, it is L-A-N-D plus I-N-G. Is the last letter before the suffix a consonant? Yes. Is there only one vowel letter immediately before that? No. So I don't do anything to the last letter of the word. I just add the suffix. Another example, same thing. This example though, G-E-T plus I-N-G. Is the letter before the suffix a consonant? Yes. Is there only one vowel letter before it? Yes. So I'm going to double the last letter, which results in G-E-T plus I-N-G is rewritten as, checking my joins, vowel suffix forces this to double because of the vowel, G-E double T, I-N-G. And I think these double T's are really hard to say. So lots of work here too. These were the ones that Melvin gave us, but I'm sure we can find others that this happens with. And maybe, I'm not sure how you would do it exactly in the word searcher to find the doubles, but it could also be a really interesting thing for kids to investigate themselves. And this one I think is fascinating because right away I know it's not going to be E-E-P-P, so one of those. In his theme, there is, this is going to keep beeping. Can you just say, I'll be there in a minute? In the theme, he does have a flow chart that does this, and that's the other way you could do it. You could just toss them some words and give them the flow chart and have them investigate it. and he gives you a list of words that you can use to practice with. In his user self-training manual, chapter L, which is included in the word study binder, talks more about these machines that he calls them, and we know them all except for word nets, which I've never seen, but he talks about that too. So very quickly, finishing up, some other things which might come up are suffixing to polysyllables. The examples in this theme are monosyllables, but this is different, and he doesn't really give us the reason why. He pretty much says, tell him you'll get there. But to get there, it would be Kit 4, Theme A. If you need to, you might want to return to the IY conventions that we've been doing, because there are times when, by adding the ing and there's a y on the end of the word, we're not doing anything. And why is that? It pings back to the relationship that we've talked about in those 3 rules. The phonology of ing, which I already mentioned, it's letter by letter sounding out of this isn't going to work because there's only 2 sounds. There's not 3. Sounds don't match the number of letters. So you may have somebody who's misspelling ing because they're trying to sound it out. So that's it.